There is a sinking feeling that many motorists will be very familiar with when you return to your vehicle and you see a parking ticket on the windscreen.
New figures have just been revealed as to how many were issued by councils in 2022. So here we go. An average of almost 20,000 parking fines were given out each day last year. That's an estimated £777,000 per day.
The average local authority issued 85 fines a day, and some London boroughs issued 10 times more fines than the national average. Let's talk to Scott Dixon, who's a consumer champion who specialises in motoring disputes. Scott, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is happening? I mean, these fines, the number of fines that are being issued, let alone before we get into the incidences and whether or not they're justified. What's going on? Is this just a way for councils to make money?
I believe so, and local authorities clearly see it as a lucrative source of revenue to fill their coffers. And many of these tickets will have been issued unfairly for every single minor infringement. And local authorities play the percentages game, knowing that most motorists will simply not bother appealing it and will just pay up to take advantage of the early discount that's available. And it's grossly unfair. A lot of the tickets that have been issued will be fair, but equally a lot won't. And it's overzealous traffic wardens that are doing it, and I think motorists are just simply seen as cash cows.
Well, I should say, a spokesperson for the Local Government Association has said, income raised through on-street parking charges and parking fines is spent on running parking services. Any surplus is spent on essential transport projects, including fixing the £11 billion road repairs backlog, reducing congestion, tackling poor air quality and supporting local bus services. So that is the right of reply. I suppose what it comes down to, I mean, there is the flip side, isn't there? Simply that if you park where and when you shouldn't park, it causes inconvenience, you've done something wrong, you should pay the fine.
Yeah, that's true, and we do need traffic enforcement in place, but equally we need a fair level playing field. And if the towns and high streets are deserted, yet the out-of-town shopping centres are thriving, and that tells its own story. And a lot of these tickets have been issued for minor keying errors, simple mistakes. And we're all human, we all make mistakes, and appeals can be lodged for a lot of these infringements that have been, made as a reason for a penalty charge notice to have been issued.
Scott, start us with some basic consumer advice then. So I get a ticket, and on the ticket, everyone will know if you pay it straight away, you pay one sum. If you pay it later, you pay more, don't you? That's the deal with parking tickets. So when I get the ticket, decide immediately to appeal, if I lose the appeal, will I have to pay the higher sum?
And well, the appeal is frozen, while the appeal takes place. But if you lose your appeal, you will have to pay the higher sum. But what you have to do is gather your evidence, and COVID has accelerated the move to doing everything digital via apps. And it's worth noting that parking apps fall under the Consumer Rights Act 2015, and it's section 34 to 36 of that legislation, which states that parking apps need to be fit for purpose, as described, and satisfactory quality. And local authorities need to have these apps tested regularly. So if you've paid via an app that's been faulty, take screenshots at the time that you've entered into the contract, and if the app has been playing up, you can use that as a way to appeal.
But how can you prove that the parking app is playing up? I know you said you can take screenshots, but I've been there when you're at a car park and the app won't even load up because it's so poor. I mean, you can't prove anything, and so then you have a choice: do I leave the car and risk it, or do I get late? Am I late for the next thing I'm supposed to be at and trying to find another parking space?
Well, if that's the only method of payment, and the app and you have had problems paying, or even if maybe the app is actually taking the payment, and these apps are not foolproof, so it's just something worth considering. And it's all about gathering your evidence. Maybe you stood beside somebody else who's having the same problems, get a witness statement, get the name and address of that person as well, so you can collaborate your evidence. It's just thinking outside of the box. And the most common problem with parking is the signs. So a lot of the signs are unclear or, maybe just misleading. So you need to be given sufficient guidance to make an informed decision, and unclear parking signs cannot do that. Also, check the ticket as well for mistakes. So, for example, if you've parked on a street called Park Lane Avenue and the ticket says Park Avenue Lane, it cannot be said that you've committed an offence because that street doesn't exist. So you've got to be your own detective, and you've got to, maybe use Google Street View as well. If you cannot go back to the parking area, you can use Google Street View to scope the car park and look at the signage and things like that. If you're minutes out of time, you've got to be allowed a grace period to read the terms and conditions of the parking signs and the contract that you're entering into. And
just a last thought, Scott. Sorry, who is the arbiter? Who arbitrates on your appeal? Who is that?
For local authorities, there will be a tribunal. So you've got to make sure that your evidence is watertight. And, if you've been unfairly issued with a parking ticket, don't be afraid to challenge it. And local authorities, they just play on the fact that many motorists will simply pay up regardless of whether it's being fairly issued or unfairly issued.
And Scott, can I just ask you one personal, have you ever, given your expertise, have you ever actually had to pay a parking fine?
I haven't, I'll be honest with you.
How many times have you had a ticket?
I have never had a ticket.
Well, you've never even had a ticket?
I haven't, no, because I use out-of-town parking centres where it's free parking, easy access and things like that. I've never had a ticket, I'll be honest with you.
Well, that is one surefire way to avoid getting a ticket, isn't it? to park somewhere where you can't get a ticket. So that probably is sage advice.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you very much. Scott Dixon is a consumer and motoring disputes expert who's never had a parking fine.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? 20 minutes past 8 is the time, for the last